So Elden Ring just won Game of the Year.
I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
And that got me thinking, why? It can't be because of the game's amazing graphics or its deep combat system. So I did some research. The game's difficult. That's gotta be it. So if I make a game that's more difficult than Elden Ring, maybe I can win Game of the Year. I'm gonna make a game that deletes itself when the player loses. Now that is a difficult game. To start, I made a new Unity project and created a red cube that'll be the player. Then I added some movement to the cube. And when I say I added movement, I actually mean I watched this tutorial and then I stole all of the code. I did add some acceleration when moving and jumping though, so technically it is my original script. So I've got the player moving, but now I need to give the player something to do. So I started making the first level of the game. This level needs to be difficult. So I got to work making the most difficult level I have ever made. And that'll do. This level might not look difficult, but what if I told you that this triangle kills you? I know, difficult. I might have taken this too far even. Now, after you die here, the game should delete itself, but it turns out that getting a Unity game to delete itself is actually pretty difficult. So I'm just gonna push that to the side for now, and I'll work on that later. For now, I'm gonna focus on making more levels. And the first level is already pretty difficult, okay? But I wanna make 5 more levels. The next 4 will get more and more difficult, and each level will introduce a new mechanic. And then at the end, I'll make a 6th and final level that will combine all of these mechanics, and it'll be the most difficult level. I started by making the room for level 2. In this level, the player will be introduced to a new mechanic, and because this is the first new mechanic that the player will run into, I need to come up with something unique and interesting. So I decided to make a jump pad. I made a sprite for the jump pad, and next I want to add some particles to it. So using my knowledge of Unity's particle system, I I don't know how the particle system works. Luckily, Brachy's, RIP, has a video that covers the entire system. And now the jump pad has a particle effect, which is cool, but it still doesn't work. In order for the jump pad to work, it needs to add force to the player, which sounds like a hard thing to do, but luckily I can just copy and paste the entire player jump code and then increase the height of the jump, and everything should just pretty much work. Okay, I did say pretty much work. Okay, there might still be a few bugs to sort out. So after many hours of work, the jump pad should be fully functional now. So if I step on the jump pad, everything works fine. But that's the problem. Something should go wrong. So I put some spikes on the roof just above the jump pad. And because that makes this part of the game impossible to beat, I changed the jump pad so that you can move to the left or right to reduce the height of the jump boost, which means you have a small window to move onto the platform to the right before you hit the spikes, which makes it a pretty difficult obstacle, but not difficult enough. I also added some spikes below the platform, and right next to that is a tower of spikes, and I mean, good luck getting past that. You're not going to. But somehow, if you do get past that, you make it onto the 3rd level. I want to switch things up for this level, so I decided to make it a vertical level. So instead of making your way across the level, you'll make your way down it. The way I envision this level is that you're a spy dropping in through the ceiling, carefully making your way to the bottom. Except instead of a spy, you're a red cube. And instead of carefully making your way to the bottom, you're frantically trying to survive and avoid all of the obstacles. So I mean, pretty much the same thing. And to make things more difficult, I decided to make a laser cannon. I started by making a sprite for the laser cannon, and then I made a laser bolt that the laser cannon will shoot out. I gave it a firing delay, which gives the player just enough time to drop down and avoid the laser bolt. This first section is only meant to introduce the laser cannon to the player. So I made a small drop that only has 1 laser cannon for the player to avoid. But now I need to up the difficulty from the 1 laser cannon. And you know what's more difficult than 1 laser cannon? 2 laser cannons. And you know what's more difficult than 2 laser cannons? A small opening in the ground with 2 laser cannons that shoot up and multiple laser cannons on the walls shooting across at you. I think this is pretty fair. But if you somehow get past that section, you've now made it to the bottom of the level. This is the part where the spy would grab their treasure and get out. But here, there is no treasure. Instead of adding a reward at the end of the level, I want to add 1 more obstacle before you can exit. So I added some spikes that you need to jump over while a laser cannon is shooting at you. And if you survive all of that, you can move on to the next level. All of the previous levels have been about testing the player's skills and their ability to avoid obstacles. But for this level, I want to test the player's mind. So the mechanic for this level is a trap that will break when the player walks over it. And the catch is that when the trap breaks, you don't know if you're going to fall into a pit of spikes or the next part of the level. So when I said I want to test the player's mind, I actually mean I want to test the player's luck. I added a few of these traps, and the player will need to make the decision to either jump over them or fall through and see what's below. All of these traps kill you, but the player won't know that, and that's what's important. At the end of the level, I want to add 1 more trap and give the player a clear 50-50, so the player can either drop down the hole like normal or break the trap and see what's below. Except it's not really a 50-50, since I've kind of conditioned the player to avoid traps, so most people are probably just going to drop down the hole, And that's the reason I decided to make the hole kill you. So if for some weird reason you decide to drop down the trap, you'll move on to the next level. And this next level is the last level before the 6th and final level, which I'm looking forward to making because I'm just gonna go wild making the most difficult level possible. But before I can do that, I need to come up with a new mechanic for the 5th level. And I'm gonna be honest, I've already come up with 4 mechanics, which is a lot for me, okay? My brain normally only thinks about eating and sleeping. So coming up with a new mechanic, it's not gonna be easy. So to make things easier, I copied the jump pad I made earlier and turned it into a speed pad. The speed pad works in a pretty simple way. It increases your speed, but it also increases how far you can jump. So I added a pit of spikes that you can only jump over with the speed boost activated. I was also curious to see if the speed pad would increase how far you can jump when using a jump pad. So I made an obstacle to test this, and it turns out that it does work with the jump pad. The only problem is that in order to clear this jump, you need to be moving at max speed. And because the player doesn't reach their max speed instantly, it's actually impossible to get enough speed to clear the jump. So you might think I need to reduce the size of the jump in order to make the jump possible, but no, I'm not gonna do that because it turns out that there is a way to make the jump. The only way to make it is to not stop between the 2 jumps so you can keep your momentum, which makes the obstacle pretty difficult, and that makes it a perfect addition to the level. Before the player can exit the level and move on to the final level, I want to test another mechanic with the speed pad. This time, I want to see if the player can outrun a laser bolt with the speed boost activated. So I added a small tunnel leading to the exit and put a laser cannon on the side of the tunnel. To reach the exit, you need to activate the speed pad, drop into the tunnel, and try and outrun the laser bolt. If you time it right, you are able to outrun the laser bolt, but it's definitely not easy. It's especially easy to die when trying to fit into the hole because the laser bolt is right behind you. So, I mean, you don't have any time to make mistakes. And the difficulty of this exit is a perfect start to the hardest level in the game. I made the drop into the final level a lot longer because I want to instill fear and make it clear that this level is different, and it definitely is different. And by different, I mean difficult, very difficult. On top of the longer drop, I want to give this level a grand opening. So to do that, I added a pressure pad on the ground. And once you walk over it, the wall will open and make a hallway for you to walk through. Yeah, so it's not just a hallway, it's a trap hallway. If you can remember, the first trap I made for this game was a jump pad with spikes above it. So for this last level, I took that trap and just copy and pasted it a few times. And I mean, by the laws of math, that makes this trap, what, like 3 times as hard? And because copy and pasting works so well, I decided to also copy and paste the laser cannon hallway from the last level. And now I have the first section of the level done. And I mean, I didn't even have to do any work, but I don't want to just copy and paste everything. So this next obstacle needs to be original. Instead of copying the obstacle, why don't I just take an obstacle I've already made and then just do the opposite? I mean, that's original, right? Instead of using the jump pad to jump over something, I could use it to jump out of something. So to do that, I made a large hole and put the jump pad in it. I also added some spikes in it for some extra difficulty, of course. All you need to do to get past this obstacle is hit an extremely precise jump, avoid the spikes in the pit, and exit the jump pad at the right time. Pretty easy, right? But what makes this hard is that you will still have the speed boost effect from the previous trap, which makes it, I mean, pretty much almost impossible to hit the jump pad. I guess you could always wait for the speed boost to wear off, but I mean, no one's gonna do that, right? And I'm not sure if you noticed, but 2 of the 3 traps in this level so far use the speed pad, and it's a little bit overused. So I made 2 more obstacles that use the speed pad. The first one is what I like to call high octane parkour. And this might not seem difficult, but it can be really hard to control the player with the speed boost activated. Even harder when you're trying to make precise jumps. So yeah, high octane parkour. The second obstacle is less of an obstacle and more of a leap of faith. You just run up and jump. You just run up and jump. Once you make the jump, you'll come across a hole. And what is this hole, you might be wondering? It's the victory hole. I did it! Finally, after all this time! Your prize is at the end of the hallway. Oh, there it is! I can see the end! Yeah, so you get killed at the end of the game. So the game is going to be uninstalled whether you win or lose. But at least you have the achievement of beating the game, which means something, right? Anyway, now it's time to work on the most important feature of the game. Something I've put off for way too long. The uninstall feature. Which, I mean, is the entire point of the game, but I'm working on it now, okay? And that's all that matters. Like I said at the start of the video, getting a Unity game to delete itself, it's not easy. This is because you can't uninstall an application that's running on your computer. The only way for this to work is if I make an external program and then get the game to run that program once the player dies, which is a little bit hard. I created a new project in Visual Studio using the C# programming language. And what is this? It turns out that C# programming is very different outside of Unity. So I did what every programmer does when they get stuck. Go on Stack Overflow and copy and paste code until something works. And something eventually worked. Now that the game's done, I can finally give it a try and see how far I get.